This is Taiwan Talk.
This is Taiwan Talk on ICRT.
Welcome to Taiwan Talk. I'm Eryk Smith, and today I'm sitting at the Taipei American School with Tobie Openshaw. You're from South Africa.
That's right, as you can tell from my accent.
You're involved in a whole bunch of different things. You're involved in some charity projects. You're a filmmaker. But let me just start with the question of how you got to Taiwan.
Well, my standard answer is I came by airplane. And way back in about 15 years ago, things were not going very well in South Africa. The economy was really tanking and crime was really at a very high rate. So I decided to make a change, and opportunity in Taiwan opened up, and I brought my family over here.
Okay. And you work in a kind of sort of like a film department of the Taipei American School.
Basically, I'm the video production specialist at Taipei American School. I have a small studio with a green screen. I've got good cameras, and I have a group of students who are very keen on doing video stuff. So I do all kinds of things here at the school, but my main responsibility is to shoot and produce all the school productions and plays and music productions and so on, to make videos of those.
So I assume you started your filmmaking career back in South Africa.
Oh, absolutely. I was a video cameraman and editor and producer back in South Africa. Did a lot of wildlife work. I lived in Namibia for a while. And I've been shooting ever since. So even to this day, I sometimes shoot things for National Geographic or Discovery or Al Jazeera or those channels when they need a Western broadcast cameraman here in Taiwan. And then I also, have some of my own projects on the side.
I think one of the most famous things that you are known for here in Taiwan is a documentary about betel nut beauties, as they're called. Tell us a little bit about the origin of this project, what you hope to achieve, and perhaps some of the stories involved with making this documentary about these women who sell betel nut, often in scantily clad outfits.
Right. So when I came to Taiwan, it was certainly one of the first things that caught my eye, were these women sitting in glass boxes by the side of the road wearing very little clothes. And I naturally assumed that they were in the sex trade, And but my foreigner friends all said, no, they just sell betel nut and they sell drinks and cigarettes and so on. But Taiwanese people said, oh, bad girls, don't even talk about that. We don't want to know that. And people say it's our culture, but it's not, and blah, blah, blah. So I immediately got this idea that there's this sort of dichotomy that people have different opinions and very widely divergent opinions about this phenomenon. And, being a documentary filmmaker, I'm always interested in things which are a little bit off the beaten track. And this is very, very unique to Taiwan. So I started researching the subject, and I started speaking to the girls. Getting access was really, really hard at first, and it's certainly the biggest problem for people who want to work on the subject. But, I've managed to crack it, and over many years, it's kind of become the thing that I'm known for, So basically, I have found that people's impression are that these girls are, like I said, either in the sex trade, or that they basically just, bad girls sitting out there and they're exploited and they sit there and show their bodies and so on. But the reality is much more nuanced than that. I've had several conversations. I'm working on a book at the moment, and I did a little TEDx talk about that and so on. So there's for me, it's just a case of let's keep the dialogue going. Let's understand that this is not a clear-cut situation, and that how we view these women and how they view themselves and how Taiwanese people view them all have differences and all are valid in their own way.
What was one of the biggest things that you discovered perhaps was a misconception that you had, or one of the biggest surprises that you encountered while filming this documentary?
I was never once offered sex by a betel nut girl.
Did you try betel nut?
No, actually,
You've never tried betel nut?
I've made it a point not to try. They always, when I'm on camera, because I get interviewed for this quite a lot, they're always on camera, they want to try and get me to try it, because they want to see the foreigner throw up.
Right, yeah.
And so I always refuse, and I have my standard little line that's saying, the girls are the beautiful part, but the nut is the ugly part of this business. And there's no doubt about it. It's not healthy. It's not good for you, and it's as a trade, it's not a good thing. I'm not trying to advocate for a trade, but as I always say, I support the troops, but I don't support the war.
How much harassment is there?
So they have their regular customers that they get along really well with, and then there's the general sort of passers-by. And depending on the location, girls would say maybe once a week or maybe twice a week, they would get some guy who will just verbally make some kind of suggestion or something like that. Mostly it's really just verbal. One girl that I know, she gets guys very regularly who stop the car and then they expose themselves to her. But the interesting thing about Taiwan society is that all she needs to do in those circumstances, she turns around and she walks back into her store, and the guy just goes away. And in many other countries, people would get aggressive and he would get out of the car and things like that. So that happens very rarely in Taiwan.
I'm Eryk Smith. Tune in tomorrow for more stories from the fascinating Tobie Openshaw.
This is Taiwan Talk.
This is Taiwan Talk on ICRT.
Welcome to Taiwan Talk. I'm Eryk Smith, and today I'm continuing a discussion with filmmaker Tobie Openshaw, who might best be known as the man behind a series of documentaries about Taiwan's so-called betel nut beauties. Tobie told me about the changes he's seen since he started getting interested in the subject almost a decade ago.
Most of them are from, working class backgrounds, and they're supporting themselves or a family, and it's a job. So, and the business has also changed over the last 8 or so years that I've been involved with it, in the sense that in the beginning, standard question for me is always, I ask the girls, does your mother know what you do? And so in the past, many of them would say, no, my mother thinks I'm a secretary in some company or something like that. But nowadays, the business has cleaned up its image to the extent that many girls say, yeah, no, my mother's not too happy about it, but she's okay, and they know. So, because the cleanup of the business happened way back when Annette Lu was the county mayor in Taoyuan.
Right.
And she instituted a dress code to begin with, and also really cracked down on underage girls working in the betel nut stalls. And so they instituted the dress code they called the 3 Bs. So it's the breasts, the belly, and the buttocks have to be covered.
Right.
And the point is that it's worked. Girls, have less problems with being harassed and so on. And the gangster element that used to be a big part of the business has largely gone away. So nowadays, I find a lot of women actually are the owners of their own stalls.
Interesting.
About 8-9 years ago, when I first started getting interested in this, as I said, the first thing for me I had to crack was to be able to speak to a betel nut girl who was prepared to be on camera and to be interviewed. And I finally found one, and her name was Ada. And so she was the first girl that I ever photographed, and I still have those photos. And then I've kind of followed Ada's life along these years. And she had dropped out at school before finishing high school, and to start this business because her friends told her it's easy money and it's a comfortable, easy thing to do. And so she did that, but she was a really, really smart girl. She was really special. And so after a while, she realized that this is not really a good thing, and she started studying. So she finished her high school while she was sitting in the binlang store. Then she quit, and she actually went to university. But she's had a few personal setbacks, boyfriends that turned bad and things like that, and her family's health. And so I'm kind of sad to report that just, in fact, 2 nights ago, I went back to Taoyuan and I photographed Ada again. After 8 years, she's back in the same store that she was before. Now, she's grown up. She's much, she was 19 at the time that I met her. She sees this as, it's just a temporary setback and she's going to move on. But I just, it is interesting. Just basically, these people all have their lives and they all have their stories, and that's what I like to do, is I try to find those stories and tell them.
You have a website where people can see some of these photos, right?
Right. It's a Flickr site. So if you search for betel nut beauties on Flickr or my name, Tobie Openshaw, you'll find them. And it's really popular. I get about 1,500 to 2,000 hits a day on that site still.
Do you have any idea when they started doing that in Taiwan?
There are sort of conflicting reports, but it could be as far back as the 70s. But it was really sort of in the late 80s that it really started to take off.
Because in the 70s and 80s, we're still talking about Taiwan being under martial law.
That's
it's
right.
a surprise that they would have allowed that. Right. So I'm assuming it started in southern parts of Taiwan and sort of...
Very much so, and very much underground.
Okay.
Yeah. No. But so now it's become much more mainstream, yeah. And so, like I said, I know girls who own their own store, who train up other girls, and they really absolutely run it very strictly like a business. And I recently made a little film which was quite interesting. a young Taiwanese girl came to me and she said that she is a designer and an illustrator, and she wants to find out more about this part of her culture that she doesn't know about. And she says that she always had it very easy in her life. Her family was wealthy. They gave her whatever she wanted, but these girls have to work for what they have, and she kind of admires that. So I said, well, if you want to really know about it, then you must be a betel nut girl for a day. And I gave her that challenge, and she actually took it up. And so we went to Sinju. There's one woman who runs a stall there that I know, trained her up for a day, and she did it, and we filmed it. We made a little film out of it, and that's online as well now.
It's pretty hard work, actually, isn't it? I mean, they have to take the nut and cut it into the proper shape and put in certain chemicals and wrap it up and all of that. It's time-consuming.
It's time-consuming, and it's also very hard on the fingers. They get carpal tunnel problems and things like that because they can sit for a whole day preparing the betel nut.
Thanks for tuning in to Taiwan Talk. I'm Eryk Smith. For info on Tobie Openshaw's work, search for his name online and you'll find photos, lectures, and more. And please note that all of our Taiwan Talk episodes are available on our website at www.icrt.com.tw.